Good morning, Lisa.
Oh, good morning, Alice.
How are you doing?
I'm so good. It's Friday in San Francisco and the weather is beautiful.
The sun is shining.
I'm very, very happy.
You literally just said this is your favourite city. Why is it your favourite city?
I did. I just think it's so beautiful when you're driving around and you see the painted ladies or you see the water. The Victorian architecture is really beautiful.
I love the Victorian architecture.
Yeah, it's weird. You look up and you're like, who built this?
And who came up with these colours on this particular house?
Totally. And so I think it's just a very visually inspiring city. And I also like how small it is. I love London, but traveling from, Old Street to Notting Hill is just so far.
It's a big city. It's a big city. I think when Europeans and particularly people from London, when they come here, are surprised by just how small it is. We're on your commute, but we're actually having to do a little tour of some of San Francisco's landmarks because your commute is so short. You normally walk.
It's true. I came up with this life hack, I think 9 years ago when I was working at EFIM in Berlin. And I think I read a tweet or something about make your commute as short as possible. So I've always tried to live as close to the office. Now it's at least 10 minutes. But in Berlin, I think it was a 15-minute cycle.
Oh, wow. Amazing. So as you mentioned, you were part of the EFT many years ago and helped us set up in Berlin. You're now a founder. Tell us about the company that you've created.
Yeah. I was working in VC. So I was working at EF in Berlin, and then I came to San Francisco to work for a fund called Bloomberg. I was around all these incredible founders, and I remember getting very, very inspired about building the existential nature of building something new into the world. And I tried actually multiple times to build a company. So I tried to build a company straight out of college, which didn't work. It was so hilarious. It was an art marketplace. And then when I got my green card, I decided, I'm in America. I want to do something big. It's a big decision leaving all your family and friends at home.
Why did you come to America?
The honest answer actually was that I was obsessed with technology. And as a student, I remember being around some amazing people when I was studying at Oxford. And it was just about the time when Airbnb and Uber and all those companies were becoming very popular in the UK. And I saw the world shifting and technology becoming this very, very prominent industry. And so I was like, I've got to be in technology. And the San Francisco ecosystem had this history of technology that was truly unparalleled. So I remember becoming very obsessed with moving to San Francisco at age 20. But it was really hard. It was actually very, very difficult to do that. So I was very lucky to be part of the UK and then German ecosystem. And after I got a bit of experience, I was able to have some credibility to move here.
So the company you built is actually helping people make that move, the move that you made from, say, Europe to the US. Tell us what Plymouth does.
Plymouth enables people to get US work visas quickly with expert guidance. And I started the company 3 years ago. What I observed was actually most people didn't know about this visa called the O1 visa. And it was this very niche visa that, in certain circles in San Francisco, people knew about. But more broadly, Europeans that I spoke with didn't really understand how to navigate this visa pathway. So I thought, hey, why don't I make this visa pathway more understandable, more legible to people? I went through it myself, and I remember many attorneys telling me I wasn't eligible for an O1 visa.
Oh, hang on a minute. Okay, we are at I don't know if you can see out the windows. This is the Painted Ladies. Why are the Painted Ladies famous?
I think they were in an episode of Full House, an American TV sitcom.
We're in Alamo Square, which has some of the most beautiful views over the San Francisco skyline. So a highly recommended spot.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Right, let's keep going. Next stop is City Hall.
Oh, I love this. We're doing a whistle-stop tour of San Francisco. So, yeah, I went through this really difficult visa journey myself. I actually came to the US on a J1, missed the H1B lottery. And I remember it was the middle of COVID, and I thought I was going to get kicked out of the country and it was going to be impossible for me to get back in. And I discovered this visa pathway called the O1, talking to my founder friends. And I was like, hey, and they were like, you should do this O1 visa. And I looked up the O1 visa online, and it said, Nobel Prize winners.
Well, the title is an alien of extraordinary ability, right?
Alien of extraordinary ability. And as a British person, you're told not to consider yourself extraordinary
at any point.
At any point. And I remember being like, I guess I should look into this. And it was actually my friend who gave me a ton of confidence. He was like, no, you can do it. You are extraordinary, which was very sweet of him. I remember thinking, oh, this is like an essay about myself. This is how I kind of explain to someone why I've done really credible things, like helping found the EF Berlin office, working with some really extraordinary PhD students in Germany. I'd done a bunch of things that I think when I could put it together and make it an legible story, it really made sense to the officer why I should be in the US.
What are the criteria for being an alien of extraordinary ability? What are the kind of tick boxes that, if someone's watching this and they're thinking about applying for an O1, what do they need to have?
Yeah, so there's actually many ways to slice and dice it. So there's 8 criteria, and you need to meet 3 out of the 8. One of the criteria is judging the work of others. So we see a lot of people judge prominent hackathons in their country or in the US. It's a really great way to boost your eligibility. Another one is critical role at a distinguished organization. So if you've worked at a company for a couple of years, we see so many amazing European talent working at Revolut or working at Monzo or working at even their universities. So if you've been a researcher at Oxford or Cambridge or Edinburgh, we can actually use that as critical role at a distinguished organization. So that's another criteria that's very, very commonly used. There's another criteria called high remuneration. So if you're a founder of a company and you raise some money and that money has valuation on its equity, we can actually include that as proof of high compensation. So say you've been working in Europe for a couple of years, you've worked at a credible company, you've been highly compensated, you've judged a hackathon, that could be your O1 visa, which is really cool. I also work with a lot of young founders now. There's a real kind of buzz in Silicon Valley for dropouts and people building, and it's very exciting. Some of these founders are really good at getting press. So that's another criteria where, you can have local press. I know there's Sifted EU and, a range of publications in the UK, but also across Europe. There's actually a really great German publication that I can't pronounce that I see. It's like Dive, I can't pronounce it. So yeah, those are 4. And then there is memberships in an organization. So if you've had a fellowship, some accelerators meet the standard too. Another criteria is original contributions of major significance. So this is the most subjective in nature at times. So if you've built an original technology and that's had kind of widespread adoption, for example, you've built a product in AI healthcare and you've had 1,000 clinical practices adopting it, you could meet that criteria. I've even worked with open source engineers who have thousands of stars on GitHub, and we kind of prove out that is an original contribution of major significance in the open source industry. So there's lots of ways to do it, and I always kind of say to founders and early stage talent, there's a lot of opportunity. So even if you're not eligible today, you could be eligible in 3 to 6 months.
Well, let's talk about when is the right time to apply for the visa. For the founders who are coming through EF, they typically wait until their seed round is raised and then apply for the visa. But there is some complexity there because often I'm hearing more and more now VCs wanting founders to have the visa to show that they can stay in the US before they commit to funding. When do you think is the right time to make the application?
I'd say the right time is when you know what company you're working for and you're eligible. You meet the criteria. So I don't know about kind of VCs recommendations. I often think that founders should kind of ignore VCs and build the company, and then VCs will come flocking. Sure. The challenge is that the government really does want to see some proof of funding for the entity. So you're actually petitioning with an entity, with a role. And I think this is actually kind of a misconception about the visa pathway. There is a petitioning entity, so a company that is sponsoring your case. You can actually do the visa via an agent, which we can explore separately, but you're petitioning with a role, and the role is Chief Executive Officer or Chief Technology Officer of Company A.
So your visa is attached to the company. So if the company doesn't work out, does that mean you lose your visa?
You can actually change to another company. So you could change. You have 60 days to change the visa to another company, or you can apply via an agent, which we can explore. But yes, you are working in the US, so the visa is a US work visa, and you have to be working and paid in the US. It's not a visa where you can't work.
What is one of the most misunderstood things about applying for a visa in the US? Maybe particularly the O1 or generally? What are the misconceptions?
I think the misconceptions for a lot of talent I work with is that they don't meet the standard. They're not extraordinary. They're like, oh, I only published like 2 papers, or I only judged 1 hackathon. And I think that's the misconception that the company doesn't matter. The government is actually looking at the company to see whether this is a credible US entity. And
it needs to be a US entity.
There is a slight, there's like another pathway, but it's very technical. But for most people, it has to be a US entity. Yeah, I could get into like the technicalities of this, but
we'll keep it high level.
Yeah. Most people, you want a US entity. I think that, another misconception is, how much you pay yourself. So there's like kind of a wide range. Some people don't want to pay themselves, and that's just not possible. You have to pay yourself a minimum salary in the US. And I think another part is there is so many ways in which you can work on your O1 visa. So you can actually work part-time. It doesn't have to be a full-time job. You can change to another employer. And you can also have the O1 visa in an unlimited fashion. So every year, so you get the initial visa for 3 years, and then you get renewals every year after. So you could be on an O1 for your entire stay in America, which I think is amazing and cool.
So I feel I'm still unpicking the differences between British and European culture and American culture, and I find it fascinating. What are the things that you really noticed when you first moved here, in terms of the differences, and particularly, this whole thing that we're doing is trying to make Europeans as successful as possible in a US context. What do you think they need to know from a cultural perspective?
You have to be really direct about your achievements. I remember arriving in 2019, and I'd come from Berlin, where people don't actually talk about their work. So I remember going to parties and asking people what they did, because I was really trying to make friends, and they would just would look at me blankly and say we don't talk about work here
in Berlin.
And then I moved to San Francisco, and it was, what are you doing? What are you building? What are your ideas? Where are you going? And there was this incredibly powerful dynamism. But as a European, I was like, we just don't communicate in this way. And it took me, I think, a couple of weeks to be really okay, I'm in a different place. And I think it is a cliche at this point to say that you have to up your confidence and up your ambition, but it really is psychologically a different mindset. And I think that the other part of it is that no one looks at you as if you're crazy or stupid. People are looking at you very earnestly, and it's an incredibly positive sum culture. So I in other ecosystems, I think New York and London, the history of kind of finance and consulting has often kind of led to zero-sum outcomes. Whereas in the West Coast, it's very positive sum. We're building for abundance, particularly true in software. Obviously, we can talk about hardware. But the whole ecosystem is designed to kind of pay it forward. And I think the other part of it is that the very successful entrepreneurs of a previous generation really do mingle with early stage founders. And there's not this kind of how do I say, really pointed hierarchy. you know, people are always kind of like excited to talk to you about like the next like phase of ideas and really
that sort of open-mindedness that you might be the next Zuck or Patrick and John Collison, or they take everyone very seriously.
Yeah, and never to write people off, because people have multiple acts. You know, I've been here for 6 years now, and people I've met in my first year have gone on to do just absolutely incredible things, you know, building generational companies, being very successful at VC firms. And it wasn't obvious at the outset. I think, you know, people might be tinkering on ideas that look like they're not going to be successful, and then all of a sudden you've built the next you know, cursor or you know, Replit. And I think that's what's so cool about being here, is that you just never know what's going to happen. The ecosystem kind of unfolds in front of you, and I find that really special.
How did you build your network? You know, you land here from Berlin. I assume you didn't know anyone. Like, how do you actually go about building your network?
Yeah, I knew 2 people actually. I was introduced to one Stanford guy by a friend, and then I had another friend from college who introduced me to someone. So I had 2 people that I met, and I also I moved into a house with 5 girls. And I'd come from Berlin living alone, and it was like the craziest. Like, I felt like I was in a sorority. It was like really unique experience.
Were they all American or was it international?
All American, and just wow, it's like kind of loud and excitable. I'm a bit of an introvert as well. I think the really amazing thing about San Francisco is people are very open to talking about ideas. And so I was genuinely so excited about kind of being in the technology industry that I was kind of like bursting to talk to people about it. Like, Berlin had felt like a very small ecosystem. And so I was here, you know, talking about kind of the history of kind of Airbnb growing, consumer technology culture. It was back in 2019. So there's a lot of future of work technologies that were coming up. Like, Notion was still early, which feels really weird to say now. And I think I just really dove in head first. I think also, you know, I was pretty unique that I had a British accent. There was not many Brits, so I think Americans found me quite funny.
Makes you stand out.
Yeah, exactly. Like this like novel British person excited about the history of technology buzzing around. And I also tried a bunch of different tools. So I was early on this technology called Clubhouse, or this app called Clubhouse. And I actually met one of my very close friends on Clubhouse. Twitter, you know, now, you know, everyone's on Twitter, but at the time, you know, just posting your ideas, people really do pay attention. Like, I read a tweet about how OpenAI culture is very much on Twitter, which I have kind of like a love-hate relationship with Twitter at this point, because I do think it is, it can be very draining and toxic at times, but it also is amazing if you're really putting your ideas out there and reaching people. So blogging culture as well. I think I don't have huge amounts of advice, but I think if I was to do it all over again, I'd really find what you're passionate about or what you love. And if you make that kind of your voice, people will start paying attention.
It's a great point. People want to see what you're building. They want to know what you're thinking. I think in some ways it's a very transparent way of building relationships, because you just put your whole self out there, and actually people often respond very positively. As you say, it's a positive sum. Reasonably inclusive culture. You know, people want to bring new people into the ecosystem, which I think makes it a very exciting place to move into. So one of the tricky things about the Bay Area is that there is an enormous talent pool here, and there's a ton of competition. It is hard to hire here. It's expensive, and retaining people is really tricky. Is there any way that a European can use their connections in Europe to actually build their team out here? Is there any benefit there?
Yeah, I think there's so much alpha in European talent right now, and I don't know how long this will last, but I think European founders have a huge arbitrage to basically pull their networks into the Silicon Valley ecosystem. I've seen this play out recently over the past year and a half with Swedish founders, where they're just pulling a lot of kind of Swedish engineers from their friend circles to build here. I also see it from London, France less so actually, but I think that might actually grow over the next couple years. But you're right, like the war for talent in San Francisco, specifically in AI, is unbelievably competitive. And if you're trying to compete with the Anthropic and OpenAI,
you just can't.
You just can't. And that's why I think it's so exciting for European founders to leverage their networks and, come raise around here, use the O1 visa, or, maybe there's another visa pathway that makes sense. And
so as an employer, you can use, as the founder who's the employer, you can use the O1 visa to bring people over to work for you?
Yeah, for sure. As long as they meet the standard. I see teams who are highly technical really leverage the O1 visa. We work with a number of robotics companies, and I think there's just such a strategic advantage. I think I'm interested in how long the talent is retained for, because the salaries here are just truly crazy in some of these fields. But I do think for the founders, thinking really strategically around, okay, there are other talent pools in the world. How do I go after kind of the talent that I need? How do I leverage my network? And then how do I bring them to the US quickly? And I think there's huge opportunity there.
Lisa, this has been fantastically helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I think we're now at your office. So have a great day at work.
Thank you, Alice.